My name is Don Iannone, and I work for the Growth Partnership of Ashtabula County, and I welcome you to this profile session. As I say, this is the next to the last, but I think you're going to find this a very interesting one. It's very consistent with the theme that we've been on, which is about futurizing Ashtabula County, which has to do with really thinking about some new ideas that could, in this case, shape some of the communities here. Some of the city and village managers were not able to be with us, but what we have is a panel of three today that include Doug Starkey from Geneva and Joe Varckette from Orwell and Jim Hockaday from the city of Conneaut. And what we're going to hear are some big ideas, some ideas that may be rooted in the present, but kind of take us forward. And so they're not perfect ideas because these are ideas that are just kind of emerging, but it's really important that we put new ideas out. And the only parameters that we have to follow here is we have a limited amount of time to share ideas with you, but they should be future-oriented, things that carry us 10 years and beyond, things that are potentially transformational, that will influence prosperity and quality of life in communities, which is, I think, a theme that we've been working with the dashboard sessions, the collective impact sessions, of how do we bring about the next generation of prosperity that's sustainable in the county, and how do we improve the quality of life, which has come out very strong in all the sessions as being important. The other parameter had to do with capitalizing on the asset base of each of the communities that you're going to hear from. And the final thing was that it involved public-private partnerships, that is, government, business, education, the civic sector working together to accomplish something larger long-term. And one of the things that I feel is particularly important is that we find a way to motivate the private marketplace to respond and grow, because economic development is fundamentally about really motivating business and building markets. So ultimately, that's where we should be, as opposed to just trying to create things that we have to prop up with either civic or governmental kinds of investments. It's about building wealth for people in this county. So again, welcome, and we'll welcome Doug Starkey, who's going to share his big idea on Geneva.
Good morning. First off, it's not my big idea, it's our big idea, and I think that's one of the benefits of Geneva. It's about people working together. We have 3 JEDs with Harpersfield. They're simple, JED 1, JED 2, and JED 3. It's not a complex memory you got to have there. But we also have the 534 CIC, which has been put together as a part of the 534 corridor study that was done. And what I want to touch base on today is we, as the 534 CIC, along with the JEDs, have hired CT consultants to do an overlay planning of the entire JED area, along with some housings areas on the outside of that. One of the themes I keep hearing at a lot of these meetings is housing. We need better housing and executive housing. So part of this plan is to look at that. So we're working together, and just so you know, it's Harpersfield Township and the city have the JED agreements, and then the 534 CIC consists of Spire, Geneva on the Lake, Harpersfield, City of Geneva, Geneva Township, JED 1, JED 2, Geneva Chamber, and the Geneva on the Lake Convention and Visitors Bureau all sit at that table and have discussions. So that group there is the ones that's actually hired CT to do this overlay. The goal is really to front load the planning for this area. One of the concerns is if we'll use a tire scrapping business comes to town, and I dealt with a couple in our township over the years. If that were to come and go into that JED, it really starts setting the tone of businesses and that kind of stuff that may go in there. And how does zoning work today for what would want to come and what needs to be changed in that zoning. So part of what CT is doing for us is not only this overlay, but they're also going to look at green space, trails, the interaction of the different businesses that may go in there. So it's a big part of that process that we're going through. So, and then they're going to have recommendations to Harpersfield for zoning changes. And part of the 534 CIC is to look at our zoning all the way through the entire corridor, which is basically the river to Lake Erie. So all of us are trying to work together and address zoning issues that may be coming up. We talked about linking this river to the lake, and when I say it goes to Lake Erie, we've actually made this go to Geneva Township Park, which is through the strip at Geneva on the lake. Considering tourism and the impact, you may have seen some articles on the bike trail that's being proposed. Here again, 534 CIC has been very active in that planning of that, and we're hoping to apply for a grant here. It's due May 16th, so we're hoping to apply for a grant that keeps that going. Really the goal is to spark business growth and interest in the area. We continue to get calls about the area. I know I take several calls on it, and with Bishop Road being paved and those kind of things happening, I know it sparks some more interest out there. So really the whole overlay of this is to address the planning and the future growth of that area, how the group sees it working, how the community sees it working. And really the benefit becomes to increase the tax dollar basis based on our JET agreements that we have for everybody involved, and also expand the sewers and continue expanding. So that's kind of my 5 minutes.
All right, that's great. We will have an opportunity to engage each of the speakers with questions after they finish, okay? Thanks, Doug. Next up, Joe Varckette.
Good morning. Giving a task that we have at hand and telling us to come up with something transformational and keep it within 5 minutes is not an easy task, I can assure you. And I know we've all put a lot of time into that. First of all, I thank the Growth Partnership for giving me the opportunity to be here. And the task, as Don mentioned, is really to identify an economic development idea. It could be new or existing, and really try to take it to another level. And also try to identify how it would be transformational to the communities involved. Again, the point here is it's an idea. It's kind of like we're at the stage of taking an idea and throwing it on the table. It's something like a 30,000-foot flyover, if you will, if you know what I'm talking about. So my idea of new businesses, and this is the area that really I was attracted to the most. So then I considered the traditional strategies in how to identify this idea. You've got industrial development, business retention and expansion, and again, all of these are going on currently in the county and have been. Workforce development and tourism, all great ideas, all great strategies, but again, I was attracted more to the development of the workforce. So I then settled on an alternative strategy, which is based around entrepreneurship. And that is where I let my research take me further. And to expand on this, I wanted to encompass the development of new businesses and also at the same time develop a workforce. So more specifically, development of, and to really narrow this down even further, I was interested in development of young, gifted minds in a future workforce and thinking about preparing youths for a future workforce. So the focus of my idea now morphs into something that I've entitled a multi-county hub for economic development through youth entrepreneurship. So what does that mean exactly? And I kind of sum it up at this. It's basically an economic development incubator program specific to high school and college-age students. It targets a region of communities. And I'm starting basically with Ashtabula County because that's our focus, but I see this expanding to surrounding communities. The focus is on a partnership between community, industry, investors, and public education. So the program goal is to target young, bright, entrepreneurial minds and provide them with an opportunity to expand their ideas through the guidance of local business experts, educators, community resources, and state and private investment. So to add to that, I would say it's to identify and nurture youths identified as having the gift of entrepreneurial traits, and it will, number one, create jobs, and it will prepare a targeted demographic of youths for future job creation throughout our region. So, as I mentioned, The idea was basically, it came to me through a series of research that I conducted, and I've got statistics that I don't have time to go through. But one of the things that I've uncovered more than anything is that the traits around those people who start businesses are usually older than the demographic that I'm targeting. So what about this young demographic? And again, this is based on statistics that I've uncovered. 77% of U.S. students grades 5 through 12 want to be their own boss. Imagine that. 42%, again, this is of the same demographic, plan to start their own business. 38% that they will invent something that will change the world. I mean, how can we not want to cultivate that? So my thought here is to establish a program to help cultivate these young minds. Now, the next question is, as a representative of a village, of a municipality, why should cities and or villages be the catalyst for such an undertaking? And again, it's all driven by the research and what I've uncovered. Cities are the perfect agent throughout proper partnership to identify and develop highly talented entrepreneurs. There are about 150,000 future entrepreneurs in the country's middle and high schools, and 20 in 1,000 have IQs high enough to be accepted into Mensa. Now, how can we not, who knows, maybe we have some of those right here in our county and in the region that I'm proposing. So in summation, city leaders, not the federal government, must own the identification and development of extremely talented future entrepreneurs, since most economic activity of any significance occurs at the municipal level. So, fast forward, why my proposed region? I'm talking about a region starting in Ashtabula County and even expanding beyond to local counties, perhaps Trumbull, Geauga, and even possibly Lake County. Why is Ashtabula County a good location to start this? It's because of our proximity, as I mentioned, to our neighboring counties. And I'm talking about the hub. I'm talking about, of course, this would be housed in Orwell, where else? But also our proximity to the high schools, not only within our region, but beyond, and the universities, like this university that we're in right now, partnering with these institutions, and the talented people throughout industries and the businesses locally. And they're the ones that would really bring a lot of expertise to the table. And the ability to provide capital to such a program, which, as you know, capital to an entrepreneur is our lifeline. And this is a program developing entrepreneurs who are going to be the ones creating the businesses and jobs in our county. Local lenders. I know I've seen some here today. We'd have to be creative with terms to get them involved. But microloans through the SBA, the local CDC and 503 Corporation, and other entrepreneurial type programs, which I know there's a good one here that is focused more on North County. But state grants and private investment in such a program would be essential. And I even talked about the creation of a corporate fund, which wouldn't be so much venture capital or even angel funding, but more of a seed fund that would be intended to fund high-risk investment, which is what we're talking about. There's other strategies which I don't have time to get into, but how would it be transformational to our community? Well, again, I go back to my initial point on what the desired outcome of such a program would be, and that would be the creation of jobs, businesses, prosperity, and wealth. And when I'm talking about wealth creation, I'm talking not only about our residents, but I'm talking about the municipalities as well. We all need more money. We need to find ways to create additional revenue. So those in themselves would be transformational, but also, and finally, I would like to add to that transformational point that this is, in fact, nurturing our gifted youth with the hope of retaining them here. It's thinking forward. It's engaging new human resources in the region that come together for a common purpose. It's the establishment of a corporate fund that would bring new investment to the area and new capital. And it's really getting good people together to share the same vision and goals and force us to think futuristic and outside the box. Thank you.
Jim, do you need me to do the slides for you? Start. This is
part of your 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
We have a IT
See, I only work with like Microsoft 2003, so I probably won't stand behind the podium. They put me last because apparently I've been profiled as a speaker that goes on too long.
Nobody would know that.
Nobody would know that. So I wanted to talk about a couple different things of what's going on in Conneaut. It's interesting to me. April 20th, I will have been in the city of Conneaut and working for the city of Conneaut for 1 year. So as I approached that, I kind of took this as an opportunity to look at maybe what some of the challenges are. I'm not necessarily, a big idea guy, but I want to talk about some of the pragmatic potential opportunities that we have and how we might use a variety of tools or techniques to maybe move forward some of this stuff. A couple things that I want to point out. Like the JET, which is fantastic for Geneva, is not an option in Conneaut. In 1966, we ate all our friends. So, township and Lakeville, are all part of the city of Conneaut. So, it's one big umbrella. The other thing is we're a full service community. We have water utility, sewer utility, public works, police, fire, paramedic, health department, parks, cemetery, court, jail, library, court. So we kind of are a big ship, and while everybody always wants to vote on regionalism and so on and so forth, Conneaut is that picture of regionalism. One of the things that I would say is a detraction to regionalism is now that you're a bigger ship, you're harder to steer. So you don't turn the shark in the corners, and that's something to always keep in mind. While we have a large budget, it's spread across 100 different programs and varieties of activities that sometimes limit even our opportunities to continue to shoulder things, as Don, I think, mentioned too, that it's just a city-style project. We do have some great advantages, but we also have some huge disadvantages. We have a deep water port and a recreational port. The deep water port has seen lessened activities. We've seen that across the county and across the state. But we have large housing stock, but it's an aging housing stock. So that can be both a good and a bad thing. We have beautiful natural areas, large swaths of land, wild and scenic river. We have abundant land, but it isn't necessarily in a full and cogent managed parks and recreation system. So while it's there, it's maybe not being optimized through a large industrial base. It's a traditional industrial base, but just like any Rust Belt community, whether we're talking about Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, whatever, we've seen some of those go out of business, and we're left with brownfields that we may be required to redevelop or invest heavily in to do that with, and that's kind of the last one there. I would say top 5 priorities for the city of Conneaut in terms of our balance sheet, not a good one. Not including the actual recreational port, which is managed by the city's port authority. They do very well. They see increasing business, and they continue to do very well. The city actually owns the entirety of the port, and then we lease to the city port authority, and they manage the actual port. There are some areas, though, like the top of the hill that includes Lakeview Park, the Ball Diamond, the trailer park, that are the city's assets and the city's alone. The city hasn't necessarily done a lot with that property or continue to manage it. We do drive a little bit of positive revenue from that on an annualized basis. We do have an industrial park on the east side, which the city develops and continue to pay the debt service on it, even though we just welcomed our first business this last year. We do hope to welcome more. Gateway Plaza is right off of 7th and 90. It is currently basically operating flat. We don't have an investment in it. I am happy to see that it has been bought in the last year and is being brokered. I'm hoping that we will be able to kind of talk about some potential exciting development opportunities that are going to occur out there, hopefully in the next several months. The bunkhouse, if you read the newspapers, obviously this is a building in our downtown that's in severe disrepair. We're doing an interesting little project. We did it's called an RFP. So we built a request for proposal process in which we could basically solicit a public-private partnership opportunity vis-a-vis that process. For counties, it's actually in their revised code. They get to do it. We had to authorize it legislatively, and that's something we started in November. We put out an RFP, and we're actually negotiating with a very interesting beneficial reuse project for the bunkhouse. So hopefully, we wouldn't have to spend the $125,000 to demolish it and then have yet another blank space in our downtown. The problem is the building codes and the zoning codes make it hard to build in a classic downtown, whether you look at like a Bridge Street or something like that. That's not a traditional or modern development pattern. So preserving some of those old buildings if you can is important, so you don't have a downtown that looks like broken teeth. So that's a big one. And then the static property, you guys may all know this one. It's called Broad and Jackson, so on and so forth. It actually has a $800,000 remediation cost to that property. Right now, we're working with the schools to see if we can do a cooperative study to maybe repurpose that and use it for our public works garage, potentially a fire department, or the school bus garage, given the size of the parcel. So maybe we can wipe out that $800,000 negative on the ledger there. However, the port is probably our most promising development opportunity. One of the interesting things is we've been working on this a while since I've gotten there, and I wish I could always say, yeah, we made lightning speed progress on this. But the development opportunities in the port are many and fundamental. The first was, and Roger has some sympathy for me here, is the lot lines and parcel information in the port was very inaccurate. So they had completed a survey for ODNR to do the submerged land lease, because essentially everything below Naylor Boulevard, everything at the bottom of the hill is under a submerged land lease with ODNR. So that survey information had to be updated, and it was in 2013, and that cost approximately $25,000. However, the actual lease lot lines were not part of that. So we're in the process of doing that. It's taken about 8 months to complete due to the age of a lot of this stuff. We're talking about going back 2 centuries and looking at deeds and updating that. We've actually had to go through, and our council's in the process of rededicating and replatting Broad Street, Marina Drive, and Naylor Drive along the lake because the legal descriptions were in such poor shape at that point. The other thing that's interesting about this one, and kind of a side note, is we're going to be done with that, but in the rededication of those pieces coming up here, but then it's kind of what do we do with it? How do we move forward with it? The interesting piece is essentially a lot of the property that exists there isn't even on our zoning map. So the sandbar piece, which if you look at the sandbar, that's only been there for about a decade. It is a piece of property, it is a parcel of property, but it has no zoning whatsoever on it, as well as several other pieces of park Point Pleasant, which has been around and has been a city-owned parcel for 3 decades, actually has no zoning. So we say, why hasn't it developed? Well, we've become the only obstacle in our development pattern. So if we look to do this, one of the things that I'm doing is that I want to use the same process that we used with the bunkhouse. That was kind of an aim small, miss small kind of opportunity. It was a smaller potato. It allowed us to kind of refine our process on it. So my goal would be to partner with our city port authority, go through a visioning planning session with East Penn State, have them come up with 5 different opportunities there that are essentially pictures. We will have a full planning session that I'm hoping to be able to kick off in July. That will be part of a comprehensive economic development plan for the community, and we're hoping to use some grant funds to do that. And then, basically use some data and development, and then go out and request for proposals for a variety of different opportunities. But we take it in little bites and little steps. I could probably talk about this specific thing for an hour or more, but that is probably our lead development opportunity there. It is certainly our most underutilized asset in the city of Conneaut. So that's all I really have.
All right. That's great. That's great. Now the work begins. Here's the proposition. You've heard the 3 ideas, and I'm just going to very quickly make a few observations about them. Geneva, build community in a coordinated and value-added way within the corridor with all the various things that, that Doug referred to, from tourism to business, housing, connectivity being an important element of that, a coordinated approach to development, focused in a defined place that connects to other places. Orwell, human capital, young people, energizing people to become entrepreneurs of the future, being the springboard to the larger surrounding region, not just Orwell, not just Ashtabula County, but doing this in a way where you really focus and capitalize on youth, you retain youth. Conneaut, focusing on a distinct asset that exists, capitalizing on it in a long-term way. What's interesting is really engaging people with their ideas locally about what to do. Certainly the lake, the port being a very defined feature of the community, and one that from Jim's characterization could be catalytic in terms of influencing other things that develop, including the list of other opportunities that he described. So just those are quick summaries. There's probably takeaway from each of those that you heard that I did not. My fingers hurt from writing so fast, but here's your job. You run a community foundation. You have $10 million to invest in each of these communities. What would you invest in and why? Once again, $10 million for each of the communities. What would you invest in and why? So it's open to anybody who wants to start that one. I gave you $10 million each.
I think in a lot of cases you got to deal with infrastructure because, like the Geneva area, they need the sewer to be extended and enlarged so they can get hotels and restaurants down in Harpersfield, Geneva area in one of the JEDs. But you've got to, it's like build it and they will come, or you you have to build the infrastructure so they can. As Jim talked in a previous thing, they've got to know what infrastructure they have and what is usable and what has to be corrected or improved. But infrastructure is huge. You got to spend some money on infrastructure so you have the capacity to take on some of the developmental things that you want to do.
That is an observation for Conneaut specifically, or the other two communities as well? Across all three? Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Fiber optic cable.
Mm-hmm.
Just so the entities in this county can talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody can access. That's another infrastructure that has to be addressed.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Good. Yeah, Rich.
Sure.
I learned my lesson with you. Definitely you have to have your point of view out there.
All right, so we're assuming that putting the money in offshore accounts is not a good idea right now?
We could create that account right here.
I guess that I would make a general comment that, and I think we all have been talking about this in different forums, but $10 million is not, it's not enough. And regardless of what you put it in, it seems like one of the better strategies is making sure that everyone here's $10 million is used strategically together to make sure that we're investing in something that is self-sustaining over time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a general observation. I wish I had something sexy to point to as an investment. I certainly have my own personal ideas, but even my best ideas, if I'm working in a silo without collaborating with others in this room, certainly communication, certainly those things. But and maybe it's my naivete from not being from this region, but I feel like that maybe that's the best strategies to do a far higher level of integrated strategies across the region. And maybe Joe's starting to touch on that with something that starts out at a smaller level, but can be expanded to, to affect all of us in this region and beyond. I did have a question for Joe. And that
Sure.
Which is, what do you look at as models that you stole this from? Or, unless it truly is an original idea, are you seeing something around the world or around the country that says, man, they did that here, and they're very similar to us in a lot of respects? think that could work here too?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Rich. And I think, as I mentioned, as I was conducting research, I started coming across these statistics that identified the interest in youths. I think of the movie. Yeah. That really have a desire or have entrepreneurial ideas and traits within them, and it's not really being cultivated. But having said that, and in some conversations I had just within the last week, I did learn of a program in Lake County, and through one of the public schools, that is really picking up on this idea of developing young people who have entrepreneurial ideas. So, when I started going through the process, it was really, I really like the idea of an incubator type program to grow business. But it kind of, as I mentioned, it morphed into more of a specific demographic just because of the information that I uncovered. And I didn't see a whole lot of foundation around this idea. But like I said, it's an idea being thrown on the table to try to develop. There's a lot of interest in young people, and especially with the resources that they have today. Kids are doing things and thinking about things that they never have before. So cultivating them at a young age is, that's kind of how the idea came about. It was really not a whole lot of more structure beyond that, but to be developed.
We don't normally have a seed leadership
It started. Did you say the youth leadership? Yes. And that was another program that I looked at, and thinking about the youth, and getting them involved in leadership roles, and thinking about leadership as a whole. But I even took it beyond that to really try to target the interest of young people in actually wanting to take an idea that they have at a young age and cultivate it into an actual business. But I can see that as a foundation locally that would certainly be used, and I don't doubt that at all. I think that's a great point.
Honestly, what I have in this file is it was just submitted, but it was our application for a large grant that we've been working on for a long time. But it's a program that is going to be taking place next year. It will starting this summer. It's an entrepreneurship program called our Leadership Lab program, where we have 15 students from Lakeside High School that are going to be working in a local business this summer. And they're going to be working in the business kind of from the ground up. It's not a small business, entrepreneurial endeavor, but they're going to be learning every aspect of the business, not just working in a shop, storefront, but learning everything from the ordering to the hiring to the process to a little bit of everything throughout the summer. And then throughout the school year, it's a one-day-a-month full 7 a.m. to 2:30 class day with us, but as well as a few days after school where it's almost like a business level course. And we're going to be working with some folks that are professors here at Penn State, as well as the owners of the business, and we're applying that project-based learning model. And we've been doing a lot of work in the development of that, and the grant process also includes some teachers from Lakeside High School being trained in that as well. But it's an entrepreneurship-based program, and it's answering that call for students have a desire to be their own business owner in a sense, and it's really teaching them the critical thinking skills that they're kind of missing in the process, those soft skills, but also the confidence building that goes along with it, and better preparing them for that first year of college, so that they have, as silly as it sounds, those basic mathematical skills, the balancing, the checkbook, the reading of a data sheet, all of those things that you need the basics when you're developing a business plan, but also the critical thinking that goes along with it. So we're working really hard on that program development, and it's kind of the first of its kind here in the county, and it's been very well received in the process.
Roger and then Dan, but I want to make a comment. Rich's point, I thought about that question, how much money was I going to give you, okay? $10 million, you're right, if you threw it at any of these three projects, probably wouldn't go very far, but the question is how do you leverage that, okay? So Roger and then Dan.
I had the opportunity to listen to a guy that was part which is rated, last year it was #1 in the world in regard to what they've done there. And if you listen to this guy talk about how they did it, Youngstown University is a key factor. Kent will be a key factor. But I sort of would put my 10 million towards an incubator program of that nature, and they're very specific in regard to what they want to create. It's not just any job; it's jobs in certain areas. You know, and they brought people back to Youngstown with this incubator program. It's an exciting, and I wish everybody would have the opportunity to hear about that program. So it's a suggestion for.
Yeah, maybe we could invite Jim Kostler to come up. Yeah, it's a great idea. Dan?
I sit through a number of these groups like this, and I listen to a lot of great ideas. But something that is always overlooked, and I think if we are going to move Ashtabula County, as you would say, if we are going to move the needle, we need to, I have $30 million. I would invest it in trying to rid this county of this generational poverty. I would invest in education, at the K through 6, K through 12 level, and push those kids then to go out and either earn a trade, not so much going to college, but earn a trade, or go to college and help those folks. I don't think it's a very popular thing to talk about, but if I go to any of the cities, 20% of our kids live in poverty. We worry about building things nice. They worry about where they're going to sleep. I talked to the superintendent that says he has kids sleeping in his car. If we were going to invest money, I know it's not pretty, and I know it's not beautiful, but we would invest in those people, and a rising tide would all shift. And if we're going to lift this county, we're going to actually make a change. We need to address that. With that, we would address crime, we would address our jail space, we would address social services. There would just be a number of things that would help our county move forward.
Okay. And the other thing is that the 3 communities and projects could tie that objective to it, so that there's some energy to address that. But appreciate that. I saw another hand. Yes, ma'am.
I guess I would take my $10 million and probably ask for some others to give me some of theirs to attack the serious drug issue in our county. I serve on the Children's Services Board, and it breaks my heart every month to go in and see the number of new children who have been taken out of their homes because of their parents involved in drugs. Not only their parents, but their grandparents. And that fact just broke my heart. That we have, and that's not just Ashtabula County. That's everywhere. But I'm in Ashtabula County, and I see a very serious problem. These ideas are wonderful, and I definitely tied to the youth because that's where I've done my career. And I can see, but unless we attack that underlying issue somehow, and it's going to take millions and millions to be able to help people prevent the use of drugs.
Appreciate that. So we're really hitting the nail on the head, those things that really hold us back, and that's very consistent with what Dan was saying. Jim?
I'd like to address that a little bit. We come into those situations and drug problems in Conneaut are prevalent, and we're well aware of it. And it becomes a balancing act. We don't get to choose to respond to that. We have to respond to that, and we do respond to it. So when you look at, what is $10 million to get you? Well, it gets me about 6 months if you look at our budget. So that's the reality is, and we deal with that on a consistent basis. Our jail is full every day. We have at least a methamphetamine lab at home once a month. That's been the case that we've been dealing with it, not including the heroin and so on and so forth. And if people think what you read in the newspaper is an accurate depiction of the scale of the drug problem in Ashtabula County, I beg to differ. You see about 1/10 of it, 1/20th of the problem in the number of issues that we deal with on a daily basis. You know, we have to respond to that. So when we come into a methamphetamine lab and you know, yeah, meth was in one room, trust me, the whole house is contaminated. How do we deal with that? Well, we involve a number of different agencies, just about every department in our city, and ultimately when they can't afford to remediate the house properly, the city's going to be required to demolish that house, and it's going to, we'll probably spend $50,000 a house. I don't get to choose to do that. We have to do that. We have to take away the places that are doing the drugs to solve the problem. So, on the other hand, what are we going to do for economic development? Because it can't just be reactive, chasing the drug out of the community. That is definitely part of the strategy. What do we do in terms of a positive future and how do we develop that? Some of the things that I think everybody here talked about was how do we invest in our future, how do we create jobs, how do we create positive experiences in our community. Frequently, it's the last thing we get to deal with. So if you look at a little bit of the strategies that we put down to employ in Conneaut is, I can't go in and fix the bunkhouse. It would cost us $125,000 to tear it down. So let's put it out there to the private sector. Maybe they have a special ability, a flexibility, or simply a better idea in the city in terms of dealing with that problem. And that's why we put it out there. So maybe we can solve that same problem for $10,000 and get an adaptive reuse of that structure. So, you know, it's a balancing game. But we can't do all one. We can't just chase the social service need and never address the economic needs of the community as well. But as you know, $10 million isn't going to get you much. So we have to be able to live within ourselves and maybe employ a different tactic or strategy. But you have to deal with both. It's really hard to attract new businesses into an area that's riddled with crime and drugs. And you know, I've seen the city of Conneaut stand behind that. They hired new police officers. They put in a levy at great expense to the residents and communities to begin addressing that problem on a grander scale. So, you know, the problem and the challenge of public management is the needs are everywhere. And you have to begin to weigh them and how can you be most efficient with your dollars. So even when we look at the port, that's not the city going to. The city's not going to go build something there. I assure you of that. We do not have $20 million to throw at that development. So maybe we can structure something that allows a private developer to develop it and maintain city control of the property in the long run and create jobs and develop a large land, attract tourism, and get people that want to come maybe buy a house of our large housing stock and repopulate it with people that aren't doing drugs, that are a positive impact on the community. So, you know, it's balancing.
So the social and economic realities are interwoven. You know, I'm going to tell you, being in economic development for 40 years, economic development has not spoken to the social realities, not at all. And in terms of poverty, no. You know, the impact that we've had nationwide has been minuscule. So we have not tackled that issue at all. Education is the most important thing that changes the growth curve for everybody. There's no question about that. I think we've come to a new time and age where we have to rebalance the investment in people and place. Just to build more things does not make any difference. Just to renovate more things is not going to make any difference. We need a coordinated strategy to do that. Government has to step up to the plate. We have to figure out how to mobilize the market to get things done. These problems that we keep seeing over and over again, the drug problems, the things you're referring to, the things that Rich and other educators are desperately concerned about, if we don't solve those problems, and we can't do them overnight, and $10 million is not going to do it, economic development is not going to happen here. It's not. New business investment by existing companies, new companies, is not going to happen here. So as we fast forward, we look into the future, we need a coordinated strategy. And this is what we're hearing, and this is not really what I expected or wanted to hear with the collective impact sessions, that we've got to go so deep. But we do have to go deep. So what we need is a sustained commitment from everyone in this room, to be a part of the team. Don't just come to listen. Do engage, join action teams to make something happen, because we need that. This is your Ashtabula County. This is your place, and we desperately need this. We have lots of great visions in economic development about building new things and making things look better. But the fact is that we have a world that's falling apart all around it. You know, I look at the effort that we're putting in with the RNC, no offense, but I look at all the money that's going into that single event, and I keep asking myself the question, you know, are there other ways we could be spending that money? It's not that it's a bad thing for Cleveland because it puts us on the map, but this is what a few people in the world want, not the many. So we need an economic development strategy in Ashtabula County that touches the many over the long term, and all of you have got to be a part of that team. That's my message. I think, you know, the expectations of Growth Partnership, the city managers and village managers sitting here, the county commissioners, they're huge. And all of us, you know, are trying our best. But the fact is, we need all of your help to make this happen. Peggy?
Well, I just want to say that I think everybody in this room, we are committed to that. And we want to make Ashtabula better. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But I think the problem is, just from my perspective, that sometimes we don't collaborate enough to put our ideas, to put this plan together. But I think every one of us in this room are committed, or we wouldn't be here.
Rich?
I think more so now that you're giving out $10 million per meeting.
You're going to take it?
I'm coming to every meeting. No, I wanted to ask, is it okay?
But you have to give it away, Rich. That's the point.
But I wanted to ask a follow-up. Why did you get $30 million and we only got 10?
Took it all collectively.
He took it.
But more seriously, you know, are you looking at other models where you can drive economic development through public policy in social issues like guaranteed income, minimum wage?
The county is going to take on a subject that nobody's going to want to talk about here yet this year. Is we have to figure out what we're going to do with our county jail. You know, I've heard estimates of we should build a jail that holds 700. You know, we build a jail that held 100, that holds 100, that is housing 160, and it's 40 years old, and we have to do something. I heard an estimate of a 400-bed jail that costs $60 million. So, do we take that $60 million and invest it in a place that houses somebody, or do we take that $60 million and invest it in people that will build houses that will live in them and teach them, rather than, we are not going to arrest ourselves out of this problem. I have figured out and right out.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're going to be able to do, instead of making our teachers and our schools enemies, we need to make them partners.
Absolutely.
There has been a whole decade of making teachers and our schools our enemies. They are not our enemies. They need to be our partners. And that is the way, at least I see, the light at the end of the tunnel, is educating these people rather than housing them and putting them in jail forever. You just can't get rid of them.
Way in the back we had a hand.
I thoroughly believe in the each one teach one model, and I look around the room and I see all of the agencies represented and the creative and financial capabilities that each of us holds. And we talk about generational poverty and what we see in the classrooms and in the schools. But when we talk about generational poverty, we have to really take into consideration those children's parents and sometimes even their grandparents, and the stock of talent, gifts, and abilities that are currently sitting in those jails and in the prisons here. And I think it's really about connecting those individuals, all of the gifts and talents that they have, with the opportunities that it sounds like exists here in Ashtabula County. And whether that's building infrastructure or getting them connected to the individuals and professionals here, creating an internship program where we are teaching our skills to those individuals who need what we have. We're assuming a lot about those individuals, that they've had some sort of formal training, and they haven't. We tell them to go get a job, and they've never been in an office environment before. Those are those soft skills, those real skills that we can teach them. And when we're empowering the parents and sometimes the grandparents who are raising the children that we are finding in schools who have behavioral issues because they are no longer the presence of their parents or grandparents. We're empowering them, we're teaching them how to be parents, how to be proud of something that those kids then can now say to
that's a role model. That's what I want to do. Instead of selling drugs or turning to other activities that end them or put them in jail. And I think the other thing that we're not talking about is the need for all of us to reconsider the way that we treat individuals who are trying to return to their communities who have a stigma of a felony barrier due to drug issues, behaviors or offenses that they committed due to mental health issues or a drug addiction. If we try to remove the stigma that we associate with them, employ them. They did something because they have a drug addiction, and yet once we see that 4 after 4 or 5 felony, all of a sudden none of our agencies can touch them, and yet they are totally employable. And more importantly, they're coachable. They are hungry for real skills and for someone like you or me to take them under our wing and teach them the things that they need so that they can be out there building bridges. Maybe we create vocational programs that can teach them how to weld and how to do so many things that this entire county needs. That's the each one teach one. And when we start with looking at the entire family unit and not just the child or just the parent, what are we doing to give them each the skills to take what they already have and expand upon it? We don't have to start with getting everything brand new, but rub the rust off of the old and create them shiny and new again. We have to stop. They're just sitting in jails and prison. And then when we're no longer stigmatizing them and penalizing them for their drug addiction and mental health issues, guess what? We don't need a 400-person jail. Because now they have a real internship and they're being coached by individuals to be accountants, to be welders, to do the things that we need done here in the city by trained personnel.
All right, one closing thought. This is, I think this discussion and all the points that you've made really point to how closely related economic and social realities are. So, what do you do about that? A lot of other places have done or are thinking about what you call a coordinated investment strategy. And what that means is that county government, the cities, the villages, all of our foundations, everybody who has an organizational budget as a nonprofit needs to really begin to think about how we are going to strategically invest those resources moving forward. That means that maybe our missions are going to change if we want to achieve a collective impact. And I think that we need to be very conscious of building communities. Economic development is not the end game. No. The end game is really communities and its people in my eyes. And we have to build better communities, and we need a strong economy to be able to do that. But what I would encourage us to think about and come to the next dashboard roundtable, which at this point is going to be in early May, and we'll make sure that you know about it. And we will talk about how to address some of the issues, extending the conversation we had there, tying that back to the conversation we had today. But let's not lose sight of this community building in a comprehensive and coordinated way, because I think that's what it's all about. But I thank you all, and we have one final session that comes up in May, which is going to be an integrated session of really thinking across all the sessions that we've had this year. So we're going to have to do some hard work there to come up with a handful of things that we can really do something about. So that's the assignment for the next time around. But thank you for your honesty, and thank you for being here and being committed.